for the housekeeping, Isabel.
Thank you, Chair. This meeting is being recorded and published online after the meeting. Could all attendees leave their camera on but switch off their microphone when not speaking, but switch on both camera and microphone when you are invited to speak so that this is picked up on the recording. If you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand function or indicate in the meeting chat and I will alert the Chair. I will now do a roll call and would ask that members confirm their attendance when their name is called so that this is clear in the recording and can also be recorded in the minute. Chair. You're on mute, Richie, but I can see you're here.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Cook. I can see you're here, Councillor Cook.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Good morning. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you. And Councillor Gregg.
Present.
Thank you. And we have apologies from Hussein Patwa and Martin Allen. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Emma. Not a bad start. 1 out of 3 managed to unmute themselves at the right time this morning, so that's a good start. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And just to continue on through the agenda, the risk appetite statement is as ever before us, as a reminder in terms of some of the issues we need to be aware of. I'll just take that as read. Item 1.1 is the declarations of interest or transparency statements. Do we have any for this morning? Caroline?
Morning, everyone. I think everyone knows who I am, but I'm Caroline Howarth, medical lead. So I'm here today about the prescribing, but I think I will stay if you would like me to for the HASTE questionnaire. And I just want the transparency statement around that. Obviously, I'm an independent contractor and hold 2 contracts in Aberdeen City and will have been part of that HASTE questionnaire. So hopefully I can still provide you with some answers if you have any, but I just wanted you to remember that about me.
That's perfect, Caroline. That's helpful. And yes, it'd be great if you could stay for that later report as well. That'd be perfect. Thank you. Okay. I don't see anybody else. In terms of exempt business, there is none on the agenda, so no issue there. And we're then on to the minute of the 22nd of June. In terms of accuracy, I wasn't going to just to page turn one by one, but we'll just pause for any points of accuracy to be raised in terms of the minute just before we seek approval. Alison?
Thanks, Richie. It's not necessarily around accuracy. It was just to highlight that there are a couple of actions on the minutes that we said would be dealt with at the development session, and we didn't actually get round to dealing with these at the development session. So the proposal is that I bring a briefing back on both of those. So as part of the year-end report, there was a question around the quality of scrutiny and the impact that the committee are having, and on the directions report there was something around assurance around DPIAs. So the proposal, as I say, is we'll bring a briefing back on both of those things just to update the committee on.
Yep, that's very helpful, Alison. Thanks for picking that up. It's good just to again close those things off rather than leave them hanging. So it's helpful. Thank you. So with that update, just in terms of follow through, can we approve the minute from the last meeting, please?
Agreed. Great.
Thank you, John and Martin. Thank you. Okay. And moving on swiftly then to the business planner. Now, I know Fiona would normally take us through, but Alison, I think you're going to step into those shoes just to give us a brief intro to this one. Thanks.
Yes, thanks. Very last minute step in, but I'll do my best. So yeah, just in terms of today's meeting, there is one report, short if you like, but that's basically just because there are no updates in terms of the internal audit report. So line 14, that there's no report for the meeting today. In terms of the November meeting, just looking forward, as you'll be aware, we've held the two development session events, if you like, and there were a number of commitments that we made to taking some action. So we would plan to bring back details on progress around those actions to the November meeting. So if that could just be added. I've also just spotted that lines 17 and 21 seem to be duplicates, so maybe we could tidy that up for the next planner. And I think that's all there is to say about that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Alison. That's helpful. And yeah, just briefly in terms of the development sessions, just very happy to support that. Just in terms of capturing the outputs and outcomes from those sessions. Just again, as a committee, we've got that logged in terms of our activity. And again, just for those particular actions we'll want to pursue, it just gives us that kind of transparent line of sight on them. So that's helpful. Thanks. Martin?
Yeah, thanks. We have on the business planner for the next two meetings, the budget savings oversight group updates coming to us. So is this going to be a standing item going through 2027 and beyond?
Yep, thanks, Martin. Alison or Lakshmi, do you want to take that one?
I understand that is going to be a standing agenda item, but perhaps Lakshmi could confirm. Oh, I think Lakshmi's having trouble with her unmuting. I'm hoping she's nodding and smiling, which means it is going to be... Oh, there we are.
Apologies, I am working with three screens, so I just lost my cursor for a minute. Yes, that's the intention, to have this as a standing item for future such meetings. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, great, thanks. And we've got obviously the finance update and the oversight group papers later on the agenda, so we'll get into them in a little bit more detail at that point. That's good to confirm. Thank you. Okay, and with that, I don't see any more hands going up. We can approve the planner just with those comments. That would be helpful. Thank you. Thank you. And if we move on then to finance, indeed, the Q1 finance update. Lakshmi, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richie, and good morning, everyone. This report presents the Q1 financial position for the financial year 26-27 and also the projected full year outturn. For Q1, we have an underspend of 2.5 million, and the full year forecast is currently a modest underspend of 0.4, which balanced budget is what I would call. While this represents a positive position at this stage of the year, a number of favorable variances during Q1 is all time related, or it may reduce as year progresses. So I'll take it with a pinch of salt, or a large heap of salt there. And I have to say that the overall financial position remains dependent on the delivery of the approved savings program. We have 14.5 million savings program, and continued management of services and some of the pressures that are evolving. I just want to highlight, you might have noticed that the report format has been slightly expanded compared to the previous reports that you might have seen. The intention is to bring out the key messages more clearly, and also to highlight the areas that we need to monitor, watch, and the assurance levels. And just also to include that I have added an assurance statement to help the committee understand what level of confidence it can take from this report. Instead of just showing the numbers and the risks, the report now gives a clear judgment and explains why. So hopefully that is helpful for the committee to form their own judgment. What we are asking via this report: note the Q1 financial position and the forecast outturn. And consider the key financial risks and assumptions and mitigating actions that are put in place. And also please note the assurance level that is provided as part of this report. So I'll pause there and look for any questions.
Very helpful, Lakshmi. Thank you. I've got a few kind of comments myself, but before that, I shall bring in Martin first, please. Martin.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a very positive, encouraging report to see where we are with Q1. Obviously, we've got a long journey to go through 26, 27, and for that reason, I found it particularly helpful to have the two parallel spreadsheets with the quarter and the predicted the forecast outturn for 26, 27. So yeah, I think presentationally it's really helpful. It's all very transparent. I might just have one question. Q1 hosted services. There's some narrative there about the redeployment of the Rosewell budget, and I would be assuming that that's quite a hefty amount, and just wondering what is the process for negotiating or deciding and reviewing how to reallocate that budget. I note that there are discharge to access, integrated nursing team, healthcare and social work posts. I presume that that's a very complex, difficult reasoning and behind all of that. Just be useful to get some further background on how that budget is redeployed.
Julie, you want to come in here and help with this question? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lakshmi. Thanks, Martin. We're very aware that after the closure of Rosewell, we invested in Discharge to Assess, and we created an integrated nursing team to support any nursing need while people were in Discharge to Assess, to prevent the community nurses having that increased workload. So that's been very successful. So I think based on that, we're really keen to expand and enhance that models. But thinking about what is the next stage at the minute, D2A delivers really high level care needs. So actually, is there a gap of lower level needs that we can pull out of hospital much quicker, or we can keep people at home for longer, supporting lower level needs? So to do that, we do need to consider what resource we need, and we will use some of the Rosewell resource to do that, to ensure that we have a fairly robust community model that doesn't impact on the wider system.
Right. Thank you very much. I think it's really helpful to see the creative redeployment of the funding. I think our overall aim is to focus on care at home, rehabilitation at home, and so forth, to replace the function of Rosewell House. So that's some really careful, targeted thinking that's going on there. That's quite imaginative and helping to support those to support those who are still recuperating at home. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the question, Martin and Julie. And just to reinforce that, I guess one of the primary reasons for the closure of Rosewell was to reinvest in those kind of services. So it's important that we see that happening in real life. So that's helpful. Thank you. John?
Thank you, Richie. Yeah, just a couple of questions. The underspend on criminal justice, I'm thinking that's a phasing issue. It's kind of when the invoices arise rather than we're not spending the money.
That's correct. So for full year, it is breaking even, John. It's Q1 is just a linear budgeting, but the reality happens differently. So, and phasing. Yeah, you're right.
Thanks for that. And my other question was on it's on page 25. It's on community health services, where the report refers to pay and non-pay pressures. So my question is how much is pay and how much is non-pay? What's the driver there?
I can come back on that, John. I don't have that handy, but Julie, is it something that you want to address just from a general comment?
So the majority of the costs will most likely be staff and bank costs for covering any sickness absence gaps. And then our non-pay, we pay quite a lot on equipment for people at home, to keep them at home, whether that is big pieces of equipment like hospital beds or hoists or bigger pieces of equipment. So a lot of it is that. So we're currently doing a bit of work to monitor the costs of the equipment. What does that look like? Are we getting equipment back when it's no longer needed? And we're doing some work to understand our bank spend a little bit more, and to try and work with teams to reduce that.
Thanks for that. Yeah. So if we're spending money on kit for people to stay at home, because they're staying at home, that's actually, if we look at a whole system approach, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Because we're keeping folk out of hospital. So we shouldn't be relaxed about an overspend, but it's as I say, from a whole system approach, it's probably a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, there's probably some, you're right, it's good if we are keeping people at home, but I think there are efficiencies in if people, pass away, for example, or no longer require that equipment, how are we recouping that back so we're not continually putting costs out and getting nothing back? So we've definitely been aware of some work that we could do better around that to ensure that we are just dotting all our I's and crossing our T's to make sure our efficiencies are there.
Okay, thanks. That's all my questions on this one.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Lakshmi and Julie, for that. I don't have any additional questions that Martin and John hasn't posed, but I did just have a couple of comments. Just to thank Lakshmi particularly. I know there's a team effort on this one, but in terms of the format and the content of the report, I thought it was really helpful. And I suspect there's more than just minor tweaks, Lakshmi, in terms of what the work is going on around about it to strengthen the report. So that balance between the figures and the narrative, I thought was really good. And for us, I guess thinking about the role of this committee in terms of the readers, for us, getting that balance is really important, and understanding what the figures are telling us, understanding what the mitigating actions might be as a result, understanding the Q1 versus the year end kind of forecast, and some of the explanations of that I thought was really good in the report. So just to welcome that in terms of what's set out there. And I do note that there is that general uplift, my only kind of a comment rather than a question, but that general uplift of 0.734, that's still to be allocated, so which again is a helpful position to be in. But nonetheless, the risks that you've also identified within the paper at this stage, this is just a Q1 report. We just need to keep our attention absolutely focused on delivering the savings, as you say, and also managing the budgets that we've got, just to make sure we can keep that positive trajectory. So just to welcome all the work's been done on it, and thus far, I think it's a moderate assurance is the right assessment for me in terms of where we're at with Q1 finance. So with that, if there's no more questions, we turn to the recommendations, which I think are on page 22. We are asked to, there's four, I'm not going to read them all out word by word, but there's four elements of the paper before us to note, A, B, C and D, and overall are we content that gives us a moderate level of assurance in terms of our Q1 output at this point. Can we approve those recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you both. Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Thanks, Lakshmi. I think we're staying with you now, Lakshmi, in Martin Allen's absence. The next item is the Budget Savings Oversight Group paper.
Thank you, Richie. This report responds to one of the committee's request for greater visibility and assurance over the governance, monitoring and delivery of the savings programs that we have. As I mentioned, it is 14.5 million of savings program to deliver. The purpose of today's paper is not to report on the current savings performance. It's to seek members' views on the proposed reporting framework that will be used for future BSOG updates to RAPSI. As we all know that BSOG has been operating since March 2025, and it provides an oversight of the delivery of the budget savings, challenge the forecast and escalation of emerging financial risks to the appropriate via the appropriate route. The intention is that the future reports to RAPSI will provide a clearer line of sight between savings delivery, sustainability, the governance arrangements in place, and the management actions. What is the template? There is a template is in appendix. The template is designed to provide a high-level RAG, red, amber, green assessment of the savings delivery program. What is the progress against the target? What are the emerging pressures? Are there any delivery gaps? Are there any key risks? And what are the mitigation actions that we are proposing for those risks? And what is the governance around the program itself, oversight and escalation routes? And again, we aim to provide an overall assurance statement to support the committee for its scrutiny role. So what we are trying to do is to just not simply report savings figures, but provide an assurance around it. What is the ask is to please review this draft template. Please note that the numbers and the figures and the narrative and the template attaches only for illustrative purposes. It doesn't reflect the real savings. Consider whether the template is sufficient. It provides sufficient assurance regarding the governance and oversight and delivery of the program. And please provide any feedback on the template so that we can improve as we go along. Thank you.
Perfect. Lakshmi, thank you for those introductory comments. I think we would open it up to committee. The committee is primarily John and Martin in this case today. John?
Yeah, thanks, Richie. Yeah, it's good report. There are various bits of text in red in the appendix, and my answer is yes to all of the questions. I think the more detail we can get to see what we're actually doing, the better, both for this committee and for the wider public who might be looking at stuff. You quite often see examples where local authorities vote for something but actually haven't quite worked out what the implications of that vote is. So the more detail we can get, I think the better. But no, it's a good report. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And that those red items were Richie's input, so we will incorporate into the report as much as possible. Thanks, Richie.
Yeah, thanks, Lakshmi. Yeah, those were some questions I posed, John. It's good. It's actually handy. They've been, I think, reproduced here just for broader comment. Martin?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a really helpful report, and I think it is particularly encouraging that the budget oversee group will be meeting on a very regular basis. I was drawn to the dashboard summary at section 4. I thought that overall it was a very good visual picture of the budget challenges, and in particular that column on gap. I think that's where a lot of the focus will go. Therefore, relating that budget gap to the mitigations and to the key risks will be exceedingly important. So obviously this is just a template currently, so it will be interesting to see how that narrative is eventually developed, so that we've got an understanding, focusing on that budget gap, why it's there, how it's going to be addressed, and then that longer term solution towards getting it as on budget as possible by the end of the year will be very helpful, and tying in the risks. So I mean, it's a very strategic, a very structured approach, but nevertheless very, very complicated, but also very helpful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's the intention, Martin. So we will try to tie everything together to tell the story in a way that helps us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks both. And yeah, just to echo, I think, John and Martin's perspectives there. Again, I thought this was another really good paper. And I think the point that their illustrative figures has been well highlighted today, so nobody will go away thinking otherwise. Yeah, just in terms of that, I think it does give a really good, I think the format and the layout gives a good level of assurance once we get into that kind of reporting cycle. And in terms of the questions, I think the 3 questions that we kind of posed and read, and just to, I guess, clarify my perspective, we're not looking for chapter and verse on every single saving, but I think we need a bit more detail so we can not just see the numbers, but see a bit more of the, again, back to narrative and understanding about what the savings actually are. So it's partly about just reminding us as a committee about what the IGB agreed by way of that savings, So just in a bit more depth, and that allows us, if things start to go slightly off kilter, we can see exactly where it's going off kilter, and also then understand the mitigating actions that flow. So just getting that extra bit of depth, I think, will be really helpful. And yeah, Martin's absolutely right. Our eyes will be drawn to the reds and the ambers in terms of the potential areas of savings that might not be being projected to be achieved. And thereafter, then the understanding of why that is important, and also the mitigating actions that could come in to compensate compensatory savings, if you like, to keep it on track. And that takes us right back to the previous report, just in terms of that flow through in terms of our forecast for the full year. So that's kind of really important. And just that last, I think the third element that John was just that final column about kind of assessments of that against another kind of RAG rating in terms of some of the risks. Excuse me. And it's just where we had it. If there's an element of concern being flagged, as well as just describing what the element of concern is, it'd be helpful, I think, just to have a comment on how that gets addressed. So again, once you get into the actual real life examples, real life kind of position, I think that might become even clearer as we kind of get there. But again, I think that's just it's a refinement rather than anything substantial for any of the kind of comments we're making here today, Lakshmi. So I mean, with that, again, I thought overall it's really good. Final thing just to kind of occur to me, just as one of the questions, one of the queries was about the level of recurring savings versus kind of one-offs in effect, and it talks about a percentage, and just that, again, minor thing, it might be helpful just to quantify that percentage, just again to get a feel for what value that actually is as well, just so we can get that captured also. But again, that's minor in the bigger scheme of things.
Okay.
So with that, yeah, Lakshmi, any comments just on what you've heard, Lakshmi, before I turn to the recommendations?
No, I think all valid points, and I've noted down some of the improvements which we will try to incorporate in the original or the real version of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lakshmi. Okay, so in terms of the recommendations are on page 32. So we have reviewed the template and we've provided comments, as just to summarise just a second ago. Excuse me. And we're agreeing, I think, that the draft template provides assurance in terms of governance arrangements to manage the budget effectively and maintain that long-term financial sustainability. And we have noted that the figures contained are illustrative at this stage. So with that, folks, can we approve those recommendations?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Good, great. Thanks, everybody. And again, thanks, Lakshmi and Martin, for the work on the paper. Moving on, item 4.3 is the review of the board assurance and escalation framework. Alison, I believe this is when you're stepping in for, again, from Martin's shoes.
Yes, I am indeed, thanks. So the framework is reviewed annually, and it was last reviewed in August 2025. Paragraph 4.7 notes the main changes made, which were improving the alignment between the framework and the risk register, and also minor updates to reflect recent changes in posts within the senior leadership team, and changes in relation to governance groups. So the committee is asked to approve the revised board assurance and escalation framework.
Thank you, Alison, for that. Now I shall pause and see if there's any comments on this one or queries, or if we're happy just to approve this. Nothing from John. Any queries, comments on this one, Martin?
No, I think it's very comprehensive. I'm noting in particular the role of the RAPC on page 79. Yeah, it's all fine, all really constructive and positive. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Martin. Likewise, I had no particular comment on this one. It seemed just a good, solid paper, and I was also happy to approve as set out. So if that's the case, the recommendations are on page 48. Can we approve those recommendations?
Agreed.
Yep, agreed.
Good, great. Thank you for that, everybody. Moving on then to 5.1, we have the progress update on the external audit action plan. Back to yourself, Alison.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. So this is the second submission of this quarterly update report. And in it, you'll see that more than 3/4 of the actions are either closed or on track, with 3 of the actions at amber. And that amber status is mainly in relation to the fact that the original timescales that we identified have not been achieved. Although a significant amount of work has been undertaken in relation to these actions, more work is required and is indeed ongoing. I think it's important to note that the actions were put in place by officers in response to the audit assessment of the annual accounts for 2024-25. The 2025-26 annual accounts are due to go to the IJB meeting next month, and as part of the report package, external audit will once again provide an assessment in relation to the accounts. So any actions or any recommendations that are identified from that will be updated in the action plan. So you might see a bit different actions coming forward in this report in future. And I think that's all that I want to say about that. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Alison. Any questions on this one, folks? John.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. There's a comment on, I think it's page 92, that says some of the timescales we set were a wee bit ambitious, and my comment on that is I would rather have slightly ambitious targets and fall a wee bit short than have easy peasy targets that is not. So I'm okay. I'm comfortable with that. There's a wee bit of an art to setting targets in that if you set them too ambitious, people will think there's no way I'm ever going to, however hard I work, there's no way I'm ever going to get this. So I won't bother. Certainly that's probably giving away something about my character. But I think slightly ambitious targets that you just fall short of is better than easy targets. And I wonder if Anne MacDonald is able to comment on the fact that the last set of accounts were of poor quality, which I think was due to the fact we had a turnover in chief finance officers. I wonder if Anne is able to say whether she thinks we're getting better.
Okay. Anne, do you want to comment on John's question?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, good morning, everyone. Yeah, so our process is really that we, as Alison has said, we'll be reporting back to the IJB when we report on the accounts for 25-26. So with the audited accounts, we'll have our annual audit report for the year, which will again go through the different assessments that we make as part of the audit opinion. So we'll formally report back there, but certainly in terms of what we've seen so far, in terms of the unaudited accounts, the quality of them is looking much stronger. And obviously I've been working with you on the development sessions for RABC, and all the work that's going around there is looking very positive and going in the right direction. So yeah, good progress.
Thanks for that. That's all my questions and comments done.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, John. Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's particularly helpful that the action plan has given very considerable focus to that point about the annual accounts. So we're obviously taking that very, very seriously. I had a kind of a question around the management data and performance. So this is a kind of a process question. Most of the other items are closed that have happened, but for example, evaluating and applying the population needs assessment and assessing the performance targets, they're ongoing. I mean, you would kind of expect that. So it's not a negative that they're ongoing. It's just to understand, they're not closed. That's just continuing, isn't it? Because otherwise it might look slightly anomalous that we've got some closed and they look, that looks fine. But obviously the population needs assessment, those are key factors for the audit process and for the action plan, and that is the dynamic information that we don't really have much control over, other than how we process it. So
Yeah,
any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. So the population needs assessment is revised regularly, and we do take cognizance of that. I think the action in the action plan was to try and build on the information that's in the population needs assessment. So is there anything else? And we're working with LIST colleagues and public health colleagues to try and identify if there is anything else and anything more local. A lot of the population needs assessment is based on nationally available data, but is there anything more local that would be more relevant for us to use? So there's a lot of scratching of heads and looking around to see what's available. And of course, you know that we're on a journey with our performance information anyway. We have made a lot of improvements in the availability of information that we can report on, but that's only very recent. And for some of the work that we want to do here, we really need to build up a number of years of historical information to enable us to move on from that and try and predict trends and what have you. So it's not that we're not doing anything. It's just that we're very dependent on what we have available and what work we can do to build on what's there.
Thank you. I mean, the data is challenging, but thanks very much for that. Thank you.
Yep, thanks both. And yeah, again, thanks for the paper. It's, again, just for transparency purposes, it's helpful to see it coming before us, and overall, it's good progress being made. One area that I think, as we've touched on already, and you can reflected it, Alison, was just around that performance management and the target setting. Appreciating that's work ongoing, and forgive me if I missed it, but you just remind me in terms of when might you expect that work and in terms of target setting to be completed. So in terms of the original time frame, accepting this is a whole set of contextual matters to deal with here, when might we see, I guess, that starting to come to fruition?
So we're looking at that at the minute, and what we're suggesting is we're going to do that do the target setting on a phased basis. The set of indicators that we are most confident about in terms of having historical data to be able to understand what would be a reasonable target to set ourselves is the national performance indicators. So we're going to start with that, and as you know, we're working on our performance management framework at the minute. I think we're planning to bring that back to IJB in December. So we'll have some sense of target setting within that to that IJB meeting in December.
Great, that's helpful, thanks. So again, I'm hearing it might not be the full finished polished article, but it'll be a start in terms of those initial sets of indicators. Perfect, okay, that's helpful, thank you. Okay, I didn't have any more comments other than that. So again, it turned out it's just a single recommendation this time on page 91. It's asking us to consider and agree if we're assured by the progress made to date in the external audit action plan. Can we say we are so assured, folks?
Agreed.
Yep, happy.
Agreed, good. Thank you, Martin and John, for that, and Alison, thank you. Okay, we shall move on. The next item is our presentation in terms of prescribing expenditure, and I know we've got Caroline who is with us. I've got I see Susie's joined us as well. Is Emma joining us also, or is it you guys?
Just us.
Oh no, never say just us. Okay, I'll pause and leave it over to you.
Right, Susie, are you doing the sharing, Susie? So I know who to look at. Yeah, excellent.
Yep.
Right, so, well, hello, I've already introduced myself. We're doing a double act. Susie is the Deputy Primary Care Lead. and we are going to give you a presentation on the work towards the efficiencies that's happened over 25-26, and talk a little bit about plans for 26-27. It would be remiss of me not to mention our medicines management colleagues, particularly Leslie Coyle, Alison Smith. They have done a huge amount of work, both in terms of the efficiencies, but also in terms of just making sure we're telling you guys the right information. We haven't circulated a separate report. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll realise just how complex and ever-changing prescribing is. But we will absolutely share this presentation with you guys straight after. So next slide, please. So by way of background, you'll be familiar, we are looking at a £50.7 million total city prescribing budget. It's worth mentioning Pharmacy First and Pharmacy First Plus. Pharmacy First is going to the pharmacy and getting things from them that you would otherwise have got from a practice. Urine infections for women is quite a common one people know about, conjunctivitis, skin infection, that sort of thing. Pharmacy First Plus is slightly more advanced, and not all pharmacies offer it, and not all pharmacies offer it all of the time. It requires a specifically trained prescribing pharmacist to do slightly higher level work, so maybe the chest infections, the tonsillitis, these sort of things. But in the city, 609,000 and 27,000 respectively in 25-26. It's a very small proportion of the total prescribing budget. I think Pharmacy First is also a bit of a misconception. Let's send more people to Pharmacy First because it's free. It's absolutely not free. It's cheaper than me prescribing something, but it's absolutely not free. And actually, where prescriptions are available over the counter, we're absolutely encouraging our pharmacy colleagues to not convert a potential sale to a Pharmacy First transaction. So that's a bit of work that's ongoing. So 95% of the prescribing costs come from GPs signing GP prescriptions. The rest are from our non-medical prescribing colleagues. A number of those are increasing, of course, but all the repeat medications that you get, they're all doctor prescriptions. So advanced nurse practitioners, that's what AMPs are, physios, community nurses, lots of other people are prescribing now. So IGB totally influence and monitor prescribing through local policies and supporting our teams. But actually, the amount of influence that IGB can have, there's quite a lot that you're unable to control. So clinical decisions, the cost of medication, something that's changed from being a branded to a generic, these sort of things. And also patient need and new treatments that are coming along. They might be more expensive, but they might still be the right thing to do. We can't control that. So there is no single solution. We need a broad-based system-wide approach, combining the clinical part, the operational part, and also our strategic actions. Next slide, please. We have got some good news. I'm going to let Susie give you the actual numbers, but we have got a bundle of efficiencies that are going to be achieved. We need your support, your approval. We need the public to be on board with them. We need practices help to achieve them. They aren't all guaranteed, but we've done a pretty good job. Hopefully we'll show you that. There's something called rebate money. It was paused last year, certainly, but it's been reintroduced at 3% this year. So that's reintroduced money back into the prescribing budget that we weren't expecting. We always speak about the volume and cost of medications going up and up and up. Oh, nice word. But it's starting to stabilise. We've got a graph to show you that as well. And the hot off the press news is that the amount of extra budget we thought we were going to need, we're not going to need as much. There has been a huge, I'm not going to call it a saving because we aren't saving anything, but we will need less money. And that's because of some external factors. So a lot of efficiency work, that's our internal factors. But there has been one particular medication has had a significant price change. And without doing anything, Grampian has saved over £700,000. If City will have their share of that. But this is why we're monitoring carefully and adjusting budgets all of the time. We also have got more data now. That I'll let Susie, who's going to take the next few slides, talk you through the numbers.
Perfect, thank you. So just to show you what Caroline's been describing, so what you have in front of you is the latest information from Medicines Management. So as Caroline mentioned, we do this as part of Grampian. We don't do this alone in each of the health and social care partnerships. This was released just last week. So as such, it's not been included in any other papers. So all the kind of different budget stuff that you've seen doesn't include this because it's literally hot off the press. But we felt because it came through in time for the presentation, we thought it was a really good opportunity to give you a live update. So this is in-year information. So this is the August update. So the last kind of prescribing information came out in January. To give you some background and to kind of make you understand, a lot of the prescribing financial information is done in about 18-month arrears. So although the Medicines Management team do a fantastic job, you should see their spreadsheets in terms of trying to predict and the, I suppose, data analysis behind all of this. The reality is that we are always behind in terms of latest information. So for instance, prescribing information, so the prescribing demographic and financial information begins in the sort of October, November to December period for informing next year's budget. And not only that, prescribing information, so prescriptions paid in primary care always has a 3-month time lag, just in terms of how it's processed. So the most recent data available for use to estimate prediction growth is always that sort of 18-month behind. So we always do, and you'll know this anyway, but just to kind of refresh, is that we always do this in-year monitoring, and it is absolutely critical to managing it effectively. So for budgets, it can go up as well as down, but as Caroline says, we thankfully have some good news this time. So I don't want to overwhelm everyone with figures, but just in terms of the table you have in front of you, the bits in yellow are the bits that have changed. So rather than focusing on everything, I just want to highlight the key messages within this. So if you can see, I don't know if can you see my my cursor? One of the things just to note here is the adjustment in respect of GLPs. This is the I suppose weight loss drugs, but in terms of Mounjaro, I think people would know it as. You can see that the revisited budget is a positive impact of 1.3 million. So it's a huge difference to what was originally predicted, and that's to do with the volume of growth. And I've got a slide just to demonstrate that in just a moment. The second thing to note was our existing medicines with efficiencies, it was predicted as 2.3 million. These are all in millions. However, there's been a further amount added to that of 1.8 million. So that takes the predicted efficiencies growth from 2.3 up to 4.2 million. And then, as Caroline mentioned, the just reintroduction of the 3% tariff, that is something that we don't have any control over, but thankfully it was reintroduced and we have got a positive impact of 1.1 million. And the outturn itself has actually also had a positive impact. So with those things all together, the main kind of headline figure is that for Grampian, it is a positive, a more favourable movement is how Medicines Management would describe it, of 7.7 million across the whole of Grampian. So what does this mean for City? So moving on to the next slide, what we have, this is now the City overall prescribing budget, and it's the recommendation. So what happens is Medicine Management does all their calculations and then they make a recommendation to the IJBs, to the Health and Social Care Partnership. So this is what's gone out to City, Shire and Moray, and this is the City version. So bearing in mind this came out just last week, so our CFO and our leadership colleagues will take this into account in terms of revisiting or into their budget decisions going forward. So the suggested uplift was to be around where are we? I've lost my track. Opening budget. Yeah, it was to be 3.5 million. It is now going to be 1.2 million. So it's much less than what it was. And therefore the variance on the City budget will be a more favourable position of 1.4. So this is really good news. It's a much better position. And in order to kind of describe to you, I thought actually, Caroline, do you want to do the Rixaban example?
So yeah, this is just to give you an example of how things can change. So back in 24-25, we phoned and contacted lots and lots of patients to change them from rivaroxaban to apixaban. These are blood thinning medications, people with irregular heartbeats, atrial fibrillation, blood clots. It was significantly cheaper to move them from the rivaroxaban to the apixaban. Like literally weeks after all these patients had changed, the price of the apixaban or the rivaroxaban that we'd moved everyone off changed. And actually, the benefit became much less. And you'll see later on that one of the efficiencies for this year was changing people on to rivaroxaban, which is the one we took them all off. So it just goes to show how dynamic the whole process is.
Thank you. And this is another example. So this is the, I can't say that word, but it's the Mounjaro. It's the GLP-1 example. So back when they were doing the predictions for this year, so back in the kind of October to December period when they were doing all the reviews for the recommendation in January, Medicines Management did a review of all the figures. And what you have in front of you is the blue is the budget paper prediction is the orange. So that was what they were predicting in terms of the volume increasing in terms of the GLP-1s. The actuals are the blue. So this is the information we have to date. And then the grey is the rebased predictions. So this difference has been recalculated using the data right up to May 2026. So this is the live information that we're using for the August reposition in your figures. So the prediction was a 13% increase, but the actuals are only 12%. But due to the cost of GLP-1s, it's obviously a high cost medication. This actually equates to a 1 million, as you said or seen in the last slide, 1.1 million difference. So, you know, even one medication can have an absolute huge impact on the budgetary figures. Moving on, so this was just to show, and again, you'll have seen this in previous reports and previous presentations, but just to kind of show that prescribing is going up in terms of cost and volume and on an overall basis, and we are absolutely in line with the rest of Grampian and nationally with what that looks like. We have had a bit more of a plateau just recently, which is what our figures are reflecting. However, we're also going into the winter period, so you know, that's something to be aware of. But I suppose the main message here is that all the stuff we're doing and all the different bits that we can impact on is to soften the curve. We're never going to be able to fully change that dynamic of the curve going up the way, but we are obviously doing everything we can in the things that we can impact. So I'll hand back to Caroline, who will give you a bit more around the process of what we've been doing.
So this is me just going to give a bit of an overview of like the work that's going on in the background to achieve the efficiencies that you've just seen. So as Susie said, it's very much a Grampian effort. You can't really just do one thing in City. So Medicines Management team, they identify, and they also have an amazing spreadsheet, all the potential efficiencies. They then meet with clinical leads, GP subcommittee, local medical committees, finance, and they work out, is this something that can be done remotely in isolation, or do we need to involve our GP practice colleagues in order to deliver this, usually at scale? Then deadlines are given, please, and returns are made. So when practices are undertaking this work and the Medicines Management team, remote team are doing it, they're asked to return on, you know, how many people did you switch, so that they can then make their predictions that are then reviewed. Importantly, the governance around this, there's a primary care prescribing group. I'm on that, leads from Shire Murray, finance colleagues, primary care management, our pharmacy leads, director of pharmacy, and Alison and Leslie, who I mentioned and thanked earlier, are all on this, just making sure that we've got the clinical impact safety aspects right, as well as the potential financial benefits. And above that, we have our Medicines Management team working on national meetings, sharing their ideas and just cross-checking that they're on the right track. So next slide. So the spreadsheet I mentioned, it's basically split into green, amber, and red. This is not about the amount of money potential saving. It's about how realistic is it that we're going to achieve the things on this list. So green, a lot of them are done. There's high confidence. It's likely to be well received by patients and delivered relatively easily. Amber, less certain, although many amber items have been started and finished. And red. So I've got a couple of examples of the red just to talk you through. Lots of potential savings, but the delivery challenges are huge. So as I say, the colour reflects the confidence that the financial benefit will be realised, not the size or how achievable the savings are. Next slide, please. So just to sort of walk you through last year, we've got two big ticket items, the DOAC, so that's the blood thinners that I spoke about, direct oral anticoagulants, blood thinners. Then we have the SGLT2 program, that's a diabetic medication. Then we had a bit of a mop up by the remote team where practices hadn't managed to get it all done. Then just recently in June, they've started on some new switches, and then the plan will be refreshed to take account of all the different things that have happened, and also that price change we spoke about with that psoriasis medication that's gaining us the over £700,000 benefit. So I'll walk you through the two big hitters on the next slide. So this is just an example of how it worked. So the blood thinning medication, it was a switch from an expensive edoxaban to a lower cost alternative, one of which was the rivaroxaban that I spoke about earlier. So it ultimately produced over a £600,000 gross saving. Across Grampian, we had 42 practices who undertook the work, and 25 practices elected to allow the remote team to access their clinical systems and do it. So just by way of comparison, 85% success rate when practices did it, but reassuringly 83% equally good success rate for the remote teams. The reason we involve practices, and practices are paid, I think for this one, it was £63.30 per contact with the patients because it requires a phone call, it's a clinical conversation. Some patients are being asked to change from once a day medications to twice a day medications, and not all patients on edoxaban are suitable for switching. So it's not just a case of PS on your prescription, we've changed it. This requires a clinical input. So £63.30 per patient. So it's a more expensive model than the remote model, but the remote model only doesn't even have 2 whole-time equivalents. It's got a 0.6 pharmacist and a 0.9 whole-time equivalent technician. So the net saving on this one was still £400,000. And the reason for involving the practices, it's about scale. It's about speed and scale. Get it done quickly, achieve those savings as quick as we can in year. So the next slide is the other big hitter. Although this was just a bit of information, actually. This is just, so 18 practices in City, they're listed along the bottom. The number of eligible patients is the full tall bar. The green were the patients switched, and the red were those who were eligible to be switched, but they didn't agree to be switched. And that'll be for various reasons. You know, I made many phone calls myself. Some people just don't want to take the risk. Some people switch, then they switch back. And also a little bit of demographic stuff in there as well. But you can have a look at that in detail when you get the slide pack. So the next slide is the SGLT2. So this was a change from DAPA to CANA, or I can't remember, CANA to DAPA. It's one of the newer diabetic medications. It became cheaper. So we can't break this down for City. So the figures you've got there are for Grampian. So the GP practice delivery of this one paid at £12.50 per practice because it didn't require that clinical input as much. It was simply an administrative change. So just shy of £1 million for the GP practices that did it. The remote medicines management team, again, 731,000. The only one that we can break down to City was the 473 patients that were switched by our specific city team that we have invested in. And again, it's very much a spend to save, and they've definitely saved, because the net saving there was just shy of 200,000, 95% success rate. But it's big numbers. So each saving is small, but the total number of patients, 4,500 patients involved, and then that's the saving you can get. So next slide, please. So this is the wider efficiency. So in addition to the last two, the DOAC and the SGLT2 saving, we also had a bundle of savings. Smaller efficiencies, they were all done remotely, although practices are always kept informed of things that could be done more cheaply. So there will have been some stuff that just happens because they know that they shouldn't be doing X, Y, or Z, or they should choose this medication over that medication. But the medicines management team dialed in remotely to 24 Aberdeen City practices and made a £180,000 saving on switches, many of which you'll see in the next slide. And also you'll notice that we have 27 practices, but 24 practices have been looked at. They're going to be looking at the remaining 3 practices. It does require the practice to cooperate and allow remote access, which I think we've got almost all of our practice have allowed that now. And then this is the Pemilast. Maybe it might be an R in there. It's the psoriasis medication, and it switched from branded to generic, and with that released a 700 and almost 16,000 saving. I'm going to give my washing powder analogy here for those of you that don't understand what I'm speaking about with my generics and branding. So if I gave you a prescription that says, I want you to get a washing powder, that's a generic prescription. So you go to the pharmacy and you get given Daz, Ariel, Persil, whatever they have in stock, whatever they happen to have got the best deal on. If I prescribe Ariel, that's branded prescribing, and you can only get Ariel. And if Ariel's really expensive, the pharmacy has to give Ariel. So when this medication has switched to become generic, it means that they can go for the cheapest alternative rather than saying we want you to go for this named prescription. So the next slide is very complicated and medical, but maybe some of these words will be familiar to you, or maybe you've had friends who've had things changed. But as you can see, when we talk about the green savings, it's simple things like, instead of taking 1 tablet a day, we ask patients to take 2. So people on sertraline, a very common antidepressant, instead of taking 1 150 milligram tablet or 1 200 milligram tablet, we're asking patients to take multiple tablets. And that is acceptable to most, but not all. And not even appropriate for some people to switch. Methylphenidate is our ADHD medication. Again, patients get quite attached to certain brands, and it involves a lot of conversation sometimes to convince someone that it'll still be fine if we switch you to generic. I've seen myself having phone calls that go on and on and on, and actually looking down to the HACE questionnaire, I could have seen another 2 patients in that time. So you have to just take every patient as an individual and do the right thing for them. We've got a couple of green savings in progress. So one of them is an osteoporosis treatment, the denosumab, and then again another one around oxazicin, switching from 1 tablet to multiple tablets. Amber savings is the next slide. A lot in progress, lot of saving to be had around the diabetic medications, Lancets, these sort of things, and changing to the cheapest brand. So sometimes it's better to prescribe a brand because that specific brand is cheaper than prescribing the sort of washing powder analogy. So each thing is different. Lidocaine patches, Scottish Government produced a list of medications of low and limited clinical value. Lidocaine patches, so lidocaine is local anaesthetic. You get it when you get a filling, but you can get it as a slow release in a patch. So you can put it on a sore bit. It's got very, very small number of uses. Usually if you've had shingles and you've got pain after shingles, but a lot of clinicians use it because they have no other option, or they really don't want to give morphine or these sort of more addictive medications. But the benefit of these patches lasts longer than you being on the patch. So we're doing a big bit of work. A lot of clusters are working on this one at the moment to try and reduce the amount of lidocaine patches, because if the lidocaine patch prescribing growth continues as it has been doing, you'll see in my last slide, it's going to get expensive. So there's a potential saving in these ambers of 420,000, but they're working on a likely success rate of 238. So it goes back to your point earlier, John, around ambitious targets, or trying to keep it real. So picking it about that kind of level. So last slide around the savings is the red savings. This is where it gets really, really tricky. I'm going to use the example of quetiapine. Quetiapine is a mood stabilizing medication. It's used for patients with personality disorders, significant mental health difficulties. There's a potential 12-month saving of just shy of £200,000. It's a lot of money. It would be lovely to just say, well, let's just do this. But the clientele, the type of patient that we are dealing with, almost all of them, probably 100% of them, are going to involve a psychiatrist deciding if this is the right thing or not. Patients are very stable. They've got jobs. They can drive a car. They're holding down a relationship. You change them from taking a slow release medication to once a day to a twice a day medication. They might forget it. It's really, really tricky. So that's why we've got to be really careful around the efficiencies that we choose without causing any harm. And this is why we've got the governance around it. So suffice to say, it's not happening at the moment. The other big potential saving here is our over-the-counter medications. It's our treatments for heartburn. So we speak a lot about heartburn can often be a lifestyle. So I get a phone call on a Monday from a patient who's had a heavy weekend and they've got heartburn. So easy for me just to say, here, have this. But actually, we are trying to encourage the patients to say, go and buy it. Now, it's not that cheap. It's not the same argument as the paracetamol, but it is possible to buy. If they're going to be on it for months and years, of course you're going to give them a prescription. But these short bursts of treatments, we're trying to encourage practices to consider asking them to pay. But it requires everyone to do it, and not for them to phone the next week and they then get a prescription, or, well, this person prescribed it, or my last practice prescribed it, these sort of things. Painkillers, salty water sprays to decongest your sinuses, sore throats, laxatives. A lot of these things can be bought. A lot of things are a lifestyle choice. But most of these things haven't been costed. But they get spoken about a lot. And of course, we have got our social media and public campaigns, which I think is on the next slide, around, try and buy stuff over the counter if you can. David Flegger, our Director of Pharmacy, has done a super online vlog, is it called now? Recently, I think he did a really good job at being really honest with the public. And I think it's fair to say the public have been really good. Most people that we've phoned with all of these savings have said, okay, then I'm happy to do it. I'm happy. Yeah, when you're really honest with them, saying this could save £1 million, they're on board on the whole. So yeah, so we've got our social media campaigns. Got a bit more on that on the next slide, Susie. So yeah, the reinforcing the public messages. And then the final slide is about what could be coming our way. So you've had all the good news. This is the slightly more alarming news. Medicines Management, bless them, have had a bit of a prediction around what could happen. So the GLP-1s, at the moment, you only prescribe them for diabetic patients who need them for diabetic control. But we've got a number of patients on the bariatric waiting list. So they're waiting for weight loss surgery. They're very close to allowing these patients, quite rightly, to be offered a chance to take these medications on the NHS to then avoid a secondary care cost of a bariatric surgery. That could be anything up to 2.6 million as a cost for Grampian. That's not including the patients who could be eligible even a BMI over 37, 33, where do you pick it? The cost will be borne by the health and social care partnerships, and there are floodgates waiting to open. There is a fund that comes into NHS Grampian for novel medication, and up until now, quite rightly, it's all gone to secondary care because it's about chemotherapy drugs, really, really specialist medications, and absolutely this fund should be used in secondary care. However, for the first time in its history, I keep hearing people mentioning, should some of this come to IJBs now? Because this is a cost to the IJB, Health and Social Care Partnership. But the savings, whilst of course there's going to be savings in primary care in terms of like high blood pressure treatments and so on, but the number of hip replacements, the number of people being admitted with heart attacks, strokes, weight-related illness, there will definitely be a gain in secondary care. We've got some new migraine medications, preventers coming out. Again, cost to society, patients will mean less time missing work, but it comes at a cost. Lidocaine patches I mentioned, if the growth continues, we're looking at another 0.2 million towards that. I don't need to go into all of these, but you'll see scabies. The scabies is rife, and the topical treatments, the stuff you buy from the pharmacy for your scabies, is not working as well as it used to. Resistance, so there are now more and more people needing the tablets to treat it, all coming at a cost. So we've given you some really good news, but also some potential warning shots for next year. And I think that's the last slide, isn't it, Susie? Just to move on to questions.
Yeah, thanks very much, both. It's certainly taken us through the complex world of prescribing, gee whiz. And just to think, Emily said at the start, to be helpful, I think just to share those slides around the committee, just again for we can have a bit of a look at slower time, just in terms of some of the kind of content of it. However, let's just have a little bit conscious of time. But John, you want to come in with your first question, please?
Yeah, a couple of comments and questions. I thought that presentation was really interesting and really useful. And I think the fact that there are so many variables which are completely out with our control, it's really reassuring to see that you guys are actually doing the things that are within our control. So that's really good. On the slide which was headed, what could be coming our way, I think, Caroline, you made a really good point, which is that not all prescribing is bad, in that it could either keep people out of hospital. So if we're taking a whole system approach, that's a good thing. And also, even if it's not saving money in the health and social care system, something that enables someone to stay at work when otherwise they would not be able to work is improving their quality of life. So in my book, that's a good thing as well. So yeah, that's my couple of comments. My question is, I thought I knew lots about prescribing. What is rebate money? How does that work?
That's the one question we hoped you wouldn't ask us, because we don't really know. But do you know, Lakshmi? I actually don't know. Susie,
Sorry.
do you know?
No, I don't.
It's not vital, but I thought I saw it and I thought, I don't know what that is. I'm just curious about it.
I wouldn't
Susie
worry.
might know.
I wrote the same thing down, John. I wouldn't worry. Susie?
I was going to say I'll send you a note. It was actually in the last report. It's essentially a percentage fee that the Scottish Government applies, and I don't really have the understanding behind it, but it's to do with the drug costs, and it puts money back or out of the system. So actually, I think it protects community pharmacy. So it's one of like to do with the drug tariffs and things like that. So it supports the system. But it's something that we don't have control over. So, but I'll send a paragraph that explains it.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Susie. Martin?
Thanks very much. That was an exceedingly useful and helpful presentation. Many thanks. There are just so many different perspectives, things that I wasn't aware of. So thank you for that. It helped to get more of an overall sense of the prescribing world. So there was mention at the start that you're taking more data into this evaluation system. There's more information coming in. So presumably that's all of the diverse issues about around the efficiencies. The RAG status will be helping to decide what is important to know and what isn't. There are factors like the market forces that I hadn't really anticipated were so important. So there's commercial pressures. I suppose we don't have any influence over those. And there's the prevention side. So lifestyle choices. I think that that's where the prevention message can be, where we can try to emphasize to encourage healthy healthy choices. But yeah, it would just be useful to get an understanding of this improved method of managing all of the data that there's an enormous amount. So just more on that would be helpful. Thanks.
Yep, go for it.
I don't know if it's a different data. I think what Susie was trying to say is that since the initial predictions, we now have more data, so that we can then. Is that what?
What do you mean more?
Am I right?
Do you
It's
mean
not
greater
more
volume?
as in we've now have the data for the last 6 months, so we can now add that in to then influence the predictions. But when we made the predictions, we didn't have all that data, so it's not a new way of doing it. It's just that it's such a moving feast. So we've just we've now able to have accurate live data rather than finger in the air data. So it's not a new way of doing it, because they are amazing at their data collection. It's just that we now have some more accurate and more recent data to then we can renew the predictions on it.
Right, I've got it. That's really helpful because that really supports more accurate analysis and conclusions. Yeah, I understand that. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks both. And Fiona was going to come in to say, I think, just exactly what you just said, Caroline. So I think that's okay. Thank you. Seeing nods. And Susie's just posted an update in the chat just in terms of that rebate question. We can have a look at it in slower time. Okay, thanks again. And just from my perspective, as others have said, I think as you said right at the start, Caroline, that one of the, I guess, reflections is how complex the whole kind of system is. And I've got a lot of questions I wrote down, but I think there's more for my curiosity rather than necessarily for the purposes of today. So you might find me just firing across to yourself and Susie just a few kind of queries. I guess for today's purpose, one of the things that I certainly take assurance around, which is one of the objectives that you wanted to achieve today, was around the team are on it in terms of the level of detail, the diligence, the scope in terms of what you guys are looking at is impressive. It does get into one of my kind of queries, I guess, is how the whole thing actually hangs together. I've got bits I just want to understand better, I suppose, maybe rather than query or challenge. And actually, this could have been a session on its own for an hour and a half. He's probably spent about 40 minutes on this today, and I suspect we could have had a session on its own. But nonetheless, that's been really helpful. And one of the things I think that I don't think you said it explicitly, but you implied it strongly throughout, was that this doesn't affect the impact on patients. The patient view, and this is really important, as you did reflect, and any kind of switching of drugs or whatever, that's not affecting the outcome for the patient, but it's just been more efficient, as you kind of stressed throughout. So just to say thanks to yourself and Susie for taking the time today. And I guess we'll look forward to coming through. I presume it'll be the IGB that will take ultimate decisions as required in due course in terms of the actual prescribing position for us. But I think from an audit committee perspective today, it's been really helpful to get underneath it, quite a bit underneath it. Just thanks very much. Is there any kind of final, you're going to say any final words that anybody wants to reflect back, Fiona?
Thanks, Richie, and thanks to Susie and Caroline. I think we kind of thought, how do you put this in a paper? Because it is so complex, Richie. And I think that's why I know we don't normally take the presentations here, but hopefully it was really helpful because I think it is really complex. I guess one of the key things for the committee to be considerate is we've been citing prescription pressures for a number of years of that's where we've been getting additional pressures as through the years has continued. And hopefully this helps you to understand why it's so complicated. But I think that the work, hopefully you've got that assurance that there is a lot of industry around this and behind it and understanding. And I think what Caroline and Susie have said today, we are getting the data better, more accurate, and it's coming to us more freely, which is really helpful to help us with our planning. And I think you can see that the population are happy to come with us on the journey, because we are going to have to continue to look at prescribing savings as we go forward. But thank you.
Great. No, thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Caroline and Susie, for your time today. Very helpful. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on, folks. I'm conscious of time. Now, I think just with that last conversation, we're probably going to run a few minutes beyond 11:30 before we finish. Is that just kind of check with Martin and John particularly? Are you okay just for an extra 10 minutes maybe? We'll kind of conclude it within that time. Thank you. Okay, locality planning annual report is our next item. I think we've got Ian with us, have we?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair.
If you just sorry, just if you can assume the report's been taken as read, if you want any kind of introductory comments, if you can keep them as concise as possible, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely no problem. So just to briefly mention that it's a statutory requirement for the IGB to have locality planning arrangements since the Public Bodies Act was passed in 2014. As members will know, the locality planning arrangements were integrated with Aberdeen City Council's locality planning system and then integrated under Community Planning Aberdeen in 2021. This means we share locality boundaries and align around shared outcomes, plans and resources. Today's papers are the final annual reports from the 2021 to 26 locality plans, and so far have been reported to the Community Planning Board, the Council's Anti-Poverty and Inequalities Committee and full Council. So this is the last body that we will be reporting to. We hope the members find the reports interesting and encouraging, that there's a lot of excellent community activity taking place, but undoubtedly there still are areas of challenge and inequalities which remain entrenched across the city. The new locality plans 26-36 are now in effect, so we'll make sure to report back to this committee by September next year with the first annual reports under these plans. So myself and Graham, my co-lead on the locality planning team, will be happy to answer any questions or receive any feedback from members.
Thanks, Ian, and welcome also to Graham there too. John.
Yeah, no, really interesting report. I got a couple of comments that don't actually affect the recommendations or whatever. I noticed on the figures on prescribing for anxiety and depression, we are some way below the Scottish average. So it's not really affecting the report as such, but maybe something for us as an IJB to think about. Does that mean the incidence of depression and anxiety and psychosis is lower in Aberdeen than elsewhere in Scotland, or does it mean that in Aberdeen we prescribe less for these conditions? And when I say we prescribe less, that might be a good thing or a bad thing. That was my first question.
That's quite a difficult question. I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that. I think it's got to be quite careful with things about anti-anxiety and medication that's used for depression, because I think it can be used for other things other than that particular condition. So I think I'll hand it over to Caroline to maybe set out some more detail.
I definitely haven't prepared for this question, but I would like, as Ian says, it might be down to the data collection and whether things are on acutes and repeats and whether they're given a prescription for 1 month or 2 months, or I would like to understand the data probably a bit better. But we do have a reasonable amount of support groups and support systems out with prescribing, so we've got our psychological therapy teams, and our link practitioners and all the other bits and pieces. So I can't imagine that Aberdeen has any less depression or the diagnosis And I'd like to think that it's appropriate prescribing of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications that you're seeing.
John,
Yeah, sorry, that was a completely unfair question. It was one of the things when I was rereading the papers, I just noticed it and I thought, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, apologies for that. And my other question is around, actually, I'll give me a comment first. I noticed there's a reference to Boogie in the Bar, and I think that's a good illustration of the way that we can do some things which are low tech, low cost, but actually really quite important. And I don't think we should forget those. And sorry, my other question was there is, I think it's on page 120, and there's a thing around digital skills. And there's a comment, I think it's in the North report, which says poor connectivity affects people's ability to interact. Do we know if that means the broadband where I stay is rubbish, or does it mean I've got broadband, but I'm like Councillor John Cook, who just swears because he can't use IT very well?
So this is taken from our City Voice survey. So that's something that takes place multiple times a year for Community Planning Aberdeen. And generally what it means is that there's a lack of internet. So that could be for affordability reasons. There's no, the broadband connections are not maybe good in that area. They don't have an appropriate device. It could be lack of digital skills. So there's a few things that are happening. But we have started to see that figure fall over the recent years as more people become digitally skilled and have the confidence to use it. So the numbers are relatively low across both our three localities in terms of digital non-accessibility.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it's just like one of my hobby horses is to provide services, we shouldn't assume that everyone's got a smartphone and can scan the QR code. So because there are folk out there who aren't as equipped, whether it's in terms of kit or skills. So we just shouldn't forget them. That was it.
Absolutely, and that's an approach that certainly our teams and our partners adopt. That we're aware we deal with a lot of elderly people who are in their 70s or 80s that are not comfortable. They much prefer face-to-face or over the phone. So we accommodate them as much as possible, but we've always got an eye to the future with upcoming generations that the standard way of engaging and accessing services is more digital. So an eye in the future, but we're very much present in the way the demographics are today.
Yeah, thank you. Martin?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was great to read these reports on the locality planning annual reports. It's 140 pages of joy. The wide range of different kinds of activities. There's the sport, socializing, group activities, physical activities, horticultural. It's for all ages. There's learning. We're tackling different varieties of problems caused by poverty. So yeah, it's a really good example of tackling health inequalities by empowering local people, supporting very, very localized, very specific needs within the community, helping overall to benefit well-being, including mental health, life expectancy. It's a very inclusive approach. Kind of my only question was that it's, yeah, wonderful things going on. I'm not always clear on the link to the overall transformation agenda. You know, we've got these are all supporting and driving change, tackling health inequalities and the various gaps. But I'm just not always sure if we're making that connection about how these are not just localized projects, they're actually strategic, they're part of a strategic overview. So that was just a thought that I had when reading this, and I think clearly we need to be developing and increasing the work that's done at locality level, because that's where you're really making a difference. But not always sure how that is reflected in the more generalised overviews that we get on transformation. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Gregg. We can certainly make that more explicit moving forwards. I do see the locality planning make a massive contribution to the sort of strategic aims of the IGB through strategic plan. So thinking about, you mentioned about community empowerment, community-led health and well-being, and I think importantly the shift towards more preventative and early intervention approaches within the community. So making that shift away from acute and formal social care settings back into the community. I think that's our contribution as the sort of the community's public health improvement, well-being side of things, and obviously from Graham's side, from the community-led development side as well. So, and working with our partners as well, we can't achieve nowhere near the amount of stuff that we've achieved without our key partnerships with the third sector, with our community planning partners and our community groups. So it's just continuing to build on the relationships that we've established over the years and hopefully deliver the outcomes in our new 3 new locality plans, and that in turn will help us deliver the local outcome improvement plan and the partnership strategic plan.
Right, thank you.
Great, thanks both. In terms of the paper overall, yeah, agreed. Locality planning is really important work, and I'm pleased to see in the recommendations that the work in the locality plans comes through the IGB performance reporting and Fiona's Chief Officer report as appropriate as well. So that's that kind of connection between what the locality plans do alongside what we do as an IGB. So I'm pleased to see that connection has been explicitly drawn. So with that, I don't have any particular points to raise in addition myself. So we can turn to the recommendations on page 102. Again, we've got 4 recommendations there. Again, I wasn't going to read them out, but are we happy to agree those recommendations on page 102?
Agreed.
Yeah, happy.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Ian and Graham, for coming along today. Thank you. Okay, if we can move on then, folks. Year 2 delivery plan, item 6.2. Alison.
Yeah, thanks, Richie. So this report presents the delivery plan for 2026-27 through to 2028-29, which is a bit of a shift from our previous approach of having an annual delivery plan. The main reason for this shift is us switching our focus to longer term transformation work, and most of the projects identified have milestone timelines that stretch over a couple of years. There's a fair amount of detail in the delivery plan covering what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, how we plan to do it, who will be impacted, and how we'll measure success. And we plan to report on progress quarterly as before to this committee, but we're currently working on how best to present these reports in a more streamlined way. So apologies for the amount of detail in there. I know the PDF in the pack is very difficult to read, and that's why we also circulated an Excel spreadsheet document version, which hopefully was a little bit easier to navigate. But that's all I was going to say on that, and happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks for that, Alison. John, Martin, any particular points to raise today? Are we happy with the intent behind the report?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, good. As you say, Alison, there's tons of detail in there, and thanks for sending the other information round. The detail itself gives a degree of assurance, I have to say, in terms of what the activity that's there. So again, likewise, I am happy to endorse the recommendations that are set out. But just formally, we are on page 242, and there's 2 recommendations for us to approve, endorse the delivery plan as contained in Appendix A, and then the plans for reporting progress on a quarterly basis coming back to us. I think we're all saying that's approved.
Agreed.
Agreed. Good. Great. Thank you. And thanks, Alison, for pulling that together. Okay, if we move on then to our final substantive item, it's the Health and Care Experience Survey. Michelle is here, and we've also got Caroline here if required as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just make a couple of quick introductory comments and move on to questions. So as a bit of a reminder, the surveys run across Scotland every 2 years with the aim of collecting people's experience of care within their GP practice, out of hours services, unpaid care, and experiences of social care as well. The results help us to see where there could be areas of improvements needed, and also help us to compare with previous survey results and baseline those results with other areas across Scotland. So the response rate that we've seen in this survey equates to 19%, which is what we also see across Scotland. And this relates to roughly 1.2% of Aberdeen City's population. In addition, not all respondees answer all questions. So, for example, a smaller number of individuals respond to sections on out-of-hours care, social care, etc., depending on what they've experienced over the past 12 months. So we do have several questions within the survey where we had responses of under 250 people. And finally, before I move on to questions, just a wee reminder that there's a subset of the results included within the annual performance report as well. And they come under the National Integration Indicators. The annual performance report is currently in draft, and it's due to go to IJB in September. So they'll be seen there as well. Okay, I'll open up for questions then.
Michelle, thanks for that. It's helpful in the context, and thanks for being concise given the timing this morning as well. And we'll move to Martin first.
Thanks very much. Really helpful to see the comparisons. There's a great deal of fluctuation and variability across across most of the rows. The question I wanted to focus on was from question 10 about seeing your doctor or nurse on the same day. So that's decreased year on year, and it's red for both city and in the Scottish context. Any feedback on that, reasons and so forth? Yeah.
Might pass on to Caroline and Susie on experience within practice on that one.
Martin, can you read the question? I have not committed them all to memory.
Okay, so it's about the last time you needed to see or speak to a doctor or a nurse from your GP practice quite urgently. How long did you wait? And the answers are, the answer is I saw or spoke to a doctor or nurse on the same day. So that's declined from 50 in 2020, each year down to 41% in 2026. Okay. So each year it's dropped.
Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me. And I think that is because we're seeing more redirection. Because the capacity in a practice has been squeezed to within an inch of its life, we are having to redirect appropriately, which is not always met with popularity from the patient, because of course they would like to see their GP or speak to their GP about their what they perceive to be urgent case. Through no fault of our population, it is very difficult for a member of the public to know what is urgent and what is not urgent. And we are all human, and everything is urgent when you're not feeling well. So I suspect this is because there's a redirection to our pharmacy colleagues, or to optometry, or maybe to wait for a week to see the physio, because that's safe. You've been triaged and it's safe. So that doesn't surprise me, actually.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Yeah, much appreciated.
Thanks, Martin. John?
Yeah, just in terms of access and ease of access to general practice and other healthcare professionals, certainly on GPs, we're a wee bit below, not hugely below, but a wee bit below the Scottish average. And I just wondered if we had any data on how many GPs do we have in Aberdeen per head of population. So is it a case of it's just harder here, or is it a case of we have fewer GPs, therefore it's inevitable that it's going to be harder to see folk.
Well, I almost predicted your question, and I have got some data for you, if you're interested. Careful what you wish for. But anyway, the range. So we have got the two RAS have got like a GP workforce survey. So this is 25-26, so it's hot off the press. So there is a range of whole-time equivalent GPs per 10,000. The range is 4.4 in Lanarkshire to 15.1 in Orkney. Grampian 5.7. Lothian 6.5, so a wee bit below Lothian. Tayside 6.3. Highland 8.4. The only ones that we have more than are the Lanark, and then Greater Glasgow and Clyde are at 5.4. So we're definitely at the lower end of the range. If that's helpful.
No, that is indeed helpful. And I never seem to have any problem contacting my GP, but maybe I'm just lucky.
I wonder if I might say a few words just generally about the survey, just because I've got a bit of information. I was in touch with one of the GP advisors with Scottish Government, and I think practices are very supportive of some way of measuring quality, and absolutely no practice sets out to not provide quality care. But I think the feeling is that the HASTE questionnaire is measuring access, which is only one measure of quality that a practice can provide. So I do know that the Scottish Government are working with their advisors to try and make it a bit more up to date with current models. So, you know, the government with one hand are saying, let's get MDTs in, let's get physios, let's get pharmacists, and then asking a question about how did you manage to see your GP, or did you get to see your GP when you want to? When actually they're encouraging quite appropriately the use of experts in their individual fields. So there's definitely a lot of work, and also a lot of practices are introducing the triage. So as I demonstrated earlier, you know, when you triage a patient, that isn't necessarily what they want, but it is putting them to the right place. So definitely work ongoing, and we have shared the link to this questionnaire results to practices this year. And I think the feeling was it's more of a trend. It's a trend for a practice rather than necessarily comparing, you saying, oh my goodness, you know, like 20 of my patients are really unhappy about this, but actually, what was it 15 last year, or was it 25 last year? That irrespective of practice size, they're only looking for 100 responses. So our 10,000 patient practice only needs 0.01% to make this survey statistically significant, but with a huge confidence interval. So yeah, it's not going anywhere, but it might get tweaked to reflect the more modern ways of working, so that people might actually pay a bit more attention to the results. So.
Yeah, that's helpful, Caroline. In fact, it's just I guess the question or issue I was going to kind of conclude on with this item, and is I think Michelle, Caroline, you'll seen when I first read it, I thought, gee whiz, there's lots of depth in here that would be worth teasing out. But actually, when you contextualise it in the way that you've both done, it kind of leaves you, well, okay, it's part of a bigger picture. It's a contribution, but it's not the be all and end all in terms of driving improvement and driving what we might do differently. So, but equally, we've got it before us as a committee in order to kind of to see it and observe and respond to. So, so I think my ask is, if it's going to be part of that kind of performance management framework in maybe a more rounded way, it's just I guess for us, if we're wanting to be I guess assured in terms of how the patient experience has been reflected back, and what are the kind of key issues, and what might we be able to do about it, and what's I guess significant for us in terms of how we want to play our role. If that can be in some way kind of captured in terms of that performance management framework in a way that kind of puts the HASTE survey, gives it its place, if you like. We've seen in isolation, we could have gone down all kinds of different drills today, I suspect, but we're not, I think, just because of the kind of context. So I guess I'm just kind of asking for a bit of help around, it's just helping us understand how do we deal with this. If it's part of the wider framework, then I guess just joining the dots with that when that comes back around would be really helpful, I think, just to understand how that contributes to improving services within the city. I think that's the bit that I'm trying to get to. Can I just check that makes sense in terms of what my ask is? Is that okay? Yeah, I've seen Fiona and Michelle nodding and Caroline half nodding. Big nod, perfect. Okay, no, that's helpful. No, thanks. And at the back of it, it is about, I guess, wanting us to think how we can improve patients' experience. Full stop. That's the intent behind it. Okay, folks. Let's move to the recommendations. Then they're on page 2. Am I? Oh no, sorry. Hold on. Am I in the right place? On page 256. Sorry. And this is asking us to note and consider the results which is appended, which I think we have done. So can we so do, John Martin? Can we note that?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yep,
Good.
happy.
Thank you. Great. And thanks, Michelle, Carol, and Susie for staying on as well. In terms of the rest of the agenda, there are no items that we have identified to be escalated to the IJB. Just pause to make sure that's okay. Have we received assurances from the reports presented? I think we have, but I'll check with John Martin. You content we've
Yes.
received assurance? Thank you. And the date of the next meeting is the 24th of November. And just finally, before we finish, I think today I was going to do this for the new meetings to be entered in the diary, but Emma, I think it would be helpful if we were to make the meetings allow for 2 hours. We might not need it. I think this is the second time that we've kind of just been a bit tight for time. So just to make people plan their diaries kind of appropriately, if we can just advise committee members that we're going to seek to kind of create 2 hours space for this to do our role properly. If we don't need it, we don't need it. But I'm just finding that we're just a bit tight for time, and I want to do justice to all the reports that have been brought through. And I know we had the presentation and Caroline's apologising, but actually these are important matters for us to get our teeth into as well. So just want to kind of create the right space for us to get into it. So hopefully that's doable in terms of folks' diaries. We'll get a bit of notice now for future meetings. But with that, we shall draw to a close. Thanks for your forbearance this morning, folks, and thanks everybody for your inputs. And we shall catch up with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.